Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Welcome to Mobanshi's Lair, rocking your world.
We've got another guest on the line. Zachary Switzer is an author, a publisher, and he's got a book out called Hush, and he also has a poetry line out that's on the internet. And Zachary Switzer, welcome to the Lair.
Hi, Mel. How's it going?
Okay, it's going great. Tell us about Hush. That's your book, right?
Yes.
Tell us about it and why you wrote it.
Well, Hush is a poetry book, and it's got poetry in it, and it's about bipolar disorder, mine in particular, my diagnosis of it prior to being actually diagnosed with it, prior to 2 hospitalizations in the psych ward and being committed. And what it really is I was depressed, so I wrote a lot of thoughts down when I was depressed. And then after the thoughts, which most people get a depressed side, and then after they reach the depressed side, they go to the mania, that can't sleep, wild side.
Right.
And shortly after I'd done depressed thoughts, it was after that, once I wrote that, I saw the thoughts, and then I met Manic, and all these thoughts turned into rhyming things. So I turned the thoughts I had into poetry form. So I used the depressed thoughts that was there, and when I couldn't sleep, I wrote poems from that.
Wow. So you took bipolar depression and turned it into a catharsis, a way to deal with it by writing it down and turning it into poetry.
Yeah.
That's usually how, nobody's going to tell me Bob Dylan isn't depressed. All his music is depressing. But, unless it's being sung by somebody that really can sing. But that's a lot of poetry and music and all are written by people who have some battle going on. You were diagnosed, how old were you when you were diagnosed with bipolar?
I was diagnosed officially between January and March of 2002.
So you were an adult.
I was technically 18, going on 19 that June. I was going to be in June, I was going to be 19.
Yeah. And I only know bipolar from Teddy, and I describe it, and nobody can use this because this is my term, and when I write the book, this is what it's going to be called, the ride. When I was talking to the doctor about his Alzheimer's and everything else going on, we had gotten a new doctor. And I said, do you know the old wooden, roller coaster at Coney Island? And when it pulled it up, you could hear the wheels going ching, 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 ching as it's going up, or click, clack, as it's going up. And then you're at the precipice. You're right at the top. And all of a sudden, you're flying down, and that's when they're screaming and crying and that kind of thing. Is that kind of what you went through, or was yours different?
Mine, it was very distinct, mine was, because I had the 2 weeks of depression, which it was good before that, but this was actually depression. They first thought, they misdiagnosed me 3 times.
Yeah.
First it was, clinical depression. Because, it's okay, he's sad, he's, depressed about things. Mm-hmm. And they thought, well, maybe it's not that. Then they thought major depressive disorder, which is a stronger form of depression, because it was, it got to the point where I wanted to commit suicide.
Oof.
And then they said, wait a minute, he was sad and wanted to commit suicide. Now he's all happy. Maybe it's schizoaffective disorder. Because they thought I had, schizophrenia. Then they thought, well, no, now he doesn't have schizoaffective disorder, because now not only was he depressed and not only was he excited, he's having auditory hallucinations, and he's having grandiose, and he's having delusions. And it was at that point they said, you know what? If he's having all of that, that's a classic 296-4 case in the, the DSM, which is the Bible, so to speak, of mental disorders. And they said that's bipolar 1 disorder with the last episode Manic. So it was in 2002 when they finally said he got bipolar 1 disorder with extreme stressors and paranoia.
See, when Teddy would crash after, and he would kind of go off on these. I used to pinch hit as a minister, and so I consider myself a pretty faithful person, in good with God as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I think I have a good relationship with him. But Teddy would crash, and as he was crashing, he would get this thing that he'd say, I have to make you love God or I'm going to hell. And I'd say, Teddy, I'm on a pulpit. What more do you want me to do? You want to hang me on a cross or something there, guy? Which was not my first option. I really wasn't going to do that. But when they said to me, well, does he hear voices and things? I said, no, he doesn't hear voices, but he thinks he's on this mission from God to make everybody very religious. But then Teddy also has post-traumatic stress from being in the service that was never diagnosed. You know what I mean? So he was fighting that, and I think I think finally he just couldn't deal with everything. And then once the Alzheimer hit, we kind of started getting answers because there was no choice. He couldn't deny something was wrong, and we had to get to the bottom of it. Did you hear voices, or was it some? Because the name of it is Hush the Morose. What is it called?
Yeah, Hush the Morose Musings of a Manic Mind.
Right, and manic means you just can't shut it off.
Pretty much.
You're on 24/7 because that's Teddy.
Yeah.
To get him to sleep, I got to give him a pill because he cannot shut his head off.
And see, one of the misconceptions of this illness is the fact people are like, I've heard this many times and it aggravates me to death, is the fact that they say, I don't got bipolar, I got manic depression.
Right.
And they're synonymous with one another. Bipolar disorder is now the term they use for manic depression.
Go ahead.
Because manic depression is the two terms. It's two polars. Therefore, that's why they call it bipolar disorder. So
right.
Bipolar. So that's why they call it today bipolar disorder.
See, I was watching an interview with an actress, and I'm not going to say her name because I'm probably going to screw it up. But she said, I prefer to be called manic depressive, but now the new term is bipolar. She says, but for me, manic depression sounds more accurate than bipolar. And they're the same thing, they're both defining the same thing, but one's the older term, and now bipolar is the newer term. And you're right. It's the high, and then suddenly there's the crash, and it's like two oceans clashing against each other. And the person experiencing it is in the middle. Teddy would tell me all the time, I just felt like everybody was against me. And it would come out of the blue, But you could see him escalating. You could see it escalating. You could see him becoming more agitated. Every little thing was bothering him. Suddenly he was becoming very religious. He was, and he's going boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, yeah, we're on the ride again. And when we were talking to the doctor was making this wave motion with his hand. He says, what you're describing sounds like a wave. And when I looked at him, I says, that's funny. We call it the ride. And he says, the ride? I says, yeah, because it's that bump, 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 and then you get right to the top and you're waiting, and all of a sudden they're screaming and crying, and everybody is running for cover because, his is very violent, his crash. Was your crash violent, or were you self-inflicting on yourself?
It was a mixture of both. I mean, I was destructive towards my car. I was destructive towards, people in a sense that, emotional distress.
Well, there's some people that deserve it, but that's a side thing.
I tried to kill myself 3 different ways.
Oh, my God.
I tried splitting my wrist. I tried asphyxiating myself. And then I tried to drink acetone and take out my family with me.
Oh, my God. And finally, they got this diagnosis. How did it come about that you made a book from it?
The book was already wrote before I was even in the hospital. I mean, it
Wow.
was just poetry everywhere. I kept the poetry quiet for 12 years.
What were you, like John Boy from the, that the Waltons hiding the poetry in drawers and hiding it away so nobody saw it?
No, it was there, but it wasn't until my mom found one poem that really struck out, and she's like, you know what, he needs help. It was called The Final Solution, and it was talking about in detail, in poem form, mind you, in detail about how I wanted to commit suicide.
Oh, my God. I don't suppose you can recite any of it?
In part, there's parts of it. I mean, I changed it into a different poem because it's like, I thought, you know what, I'm not going to do this. But a couple of it is, it says, out of nowhere, I was struck with a disease, never knowing and realizing that I was the one that needed how is it now?
Don't worry about it.
There's a couple that it's reminiscent of it, and that's the thing about it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
If you think about what bipolar is, it's like a wavelength. Because you got your troughs and your crest. You got your ups and your waves down.
Right.
Some people don't even have, some people just have one or the other. Some have what they call cyclothymia, which means, rapid cycling.
Mm-hmm.
And then some just have the depressed side, some just have the manic side.
Mm.
So it's just a matter of person. Just like you were saying earlier on the show about how, about Alzheimer's.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Two different people can still have Alzheimer's, but it's completely different ways in how it's manifested within the person.
Yeah, and that's and you're right. I don't care what the label is or the disease. You're going to get 2 people that are totally different and think, nah, they can't be suffered. Teddy, the only reason I realized early on that he had post-traumatic stress was because at night when he dreams, he's back fighting, and he's screaming things like, shut the hatch, and he's yelling out military jargon, and he's, you want to get us all blank killed, you want to do this, and I says, when he sleeps, he's back fighting, and he's on the bridge being fired on, and, I wake up hearing something slamming into the wall, and there he is on his knees, and he's pounding the wall right over my head, and I said, this guy's got post-traumatic stress. And then, of course, they said, well, he's got bipolar because he's not shutting off. They said that's the big problem was the medication the first doctors were giving him were kind of mimicked being on alcohol. So it was like he was a drunk, and there was no control button. And then finally this doctor says, we got to shut his head off at night so he'll go to sleep and stop thinking of that stuff. What happened? You went into the hospital. They finally figured it out. They put you on medication. There's no magic pill, right? This is a lifelong illness, right?
It's something you're going to have to deal with in a lifetime. But there is, like I said, there is no cure. I mean, there's a way just to manage it with medicine. Like right now, mm-hmm. I'm on medicine for both the the ups and downs. Right now,
Right.
there's like the medicine right now is lamoxicillin. That blocks glutamate, which excites the brain,
Right.
therefore causing the manic. That I'm now the medicine I'm on is blocking that, so that can't form.
Mm-hmm.
So what's interesting is that when I was first starting in the hospital, I couldn't go in the general population with the other guys in the hospital because they had a left wing and a right wing, which they segregated the women and the men.
Right.
And I couldn't go into all that because for the first couple of days, 2 or 3 days, I was in isolation
Right.
because I was a threat to myself.
Right.
And so they monitored me 24/7, and they wouldn't even let me have a toothbrush because they feared I'd do something with the toothbrush in order to kill myself.
Yeah.
So and when they started doing the medicine, I weighed my heaviest when I started on the medicine, and I left the hospital probably at 215 pounds.
Mm.
I mean, you're coming from a little guy that, right now I'm 135. So imagine
Right.
80 pounds heavier than that.
Right. Yeah. See, Andrew is on a lot because he has a brain injury from Iraq, and so he has impaired memory, and of course he's got post-traumatic stress, and a lot of that medication they give you, it messes with your body. It makes you retain water. It makes you hungry all the time. My doctor has a saying: nothing is free. It might fix one thing, but it's going to do something else to you. So a lot of people who have issues with stability, mental illness, or something like that, they stop taking the medications because they don't want to be heavy. They see the negative parts. Yeah, I'm thinking clearer, but I also weigh 80 pounds more than I should, when I started this. Do you have that problem, or are you good with, it's okay?
I'm better now, but I do still have some lows and highs. But at the same time, if I knew I didn't, I'd be one of those people that because people with bipolar are 40 times more likely to commit suicide.
Yeah.
More than just the general population. So I know if I get off my medicine, I'll be back where I was, and there's no sense of risking that.
Right. And I admire you. You're my hero, man. You're my hero because you don't have a keeper. Like, I'm Teddy's keeper. I'm his caretaker. I make sure he takes that freaking medicine. I make sure he, everything he needs, I take care of. But you're taking care of yourself and you're taking care of business. And I admire you. You have a publishing company. Now, if somebody wanted to get a copy of your book, Hush, the Morose Musings of a bipolar person. Is that what it's called?
A manic mind.
A manic mind. Okay. Hush, the Morose Musings of a Manic Mind. Where would they get the book?
They could get on Amazon, both as a Kindle and a regular paperback.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also go on the Barnes & Noble's website. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I can send links, but your major things, because you can't go to the stores and actually pick up these physical copies.
Right.
But you can actually order on their actual websites and order them.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, and you have a publishing company now, and you also have a poetry thing going on. And please explain what your poetry line is.
Well, this poetry line just started January 16th, somewhere around there. It started this year.
Uh-huh.
And what it is it's called The Gift of Stanzas.
The Gift of Stanzas.
Yes, The Gift of Stanzas. If you need a link, I can send the link and show you the link to the website or the Facebook page.
Well, can you tell them the link? What is it?
All you have to do is type in The Gift of Stanzas.
The Gift of Stanzas. Okay.
Yeah, it's in the Facebook search, and you'll find it. It's a community-based page.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much all it is a subscriptionary service in which I wrote poems for people, and they pay to have the service done, and I submit poems to them, whether it be inspirational poems or what have you. I mean, I can even take clue words that they give me, and they want me to write a poem, and I can write a poem based for a person or a holiday. I just wrote one for our friend Carrie, for a eulogy, and I wrote another person for his wife for a Valentine's Day card.
So you're kind of like Cyrano de Bergerac. You're the man with the words, and somebody says, look, I want to give my wife or my husband, or I have a friend who passed away and I need something to speak, and they tell you about it, and then you write something for them that's appropriate, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm like my English teacher in college said, I'm like a walking Hallmark card.
That's actually pretty good. A walking Hallmark card. Yeah, because you do have a beautiful, eloquent way with words where mine is usually every fourth or fifth word has something that really shouldn't be printed or seen by people. I've seen what you've done for people, and you do have you have a gift, and it's amazing that you've turned something that's so, most people would say, and I'm sure you say it, I would rather be a good baseball player or something than have bipolar, but you've turned it into a positive thing by being a poet, and your poetry and your words, you're inspiring other people and you're helping other people. So I can't call it a complete curse. Do you understand what I'm saying?
And like you said, you say that I'm your hero, but one of my heroes just recently died too, and that's Patty Duke.
Yeah.
And she was a big advocate for mental illness because she herself had bipolar.
Yes, she did. And her young life was a ride. It was rough.
I mean, she was synonymous with the actual symptoms that people do have, the alcohol abuse, because she refused to take medicine a long time. It wasn't until later in life that, about 30 years ago, that she finally realized that's what she had, and she said, you know what, I'm going to have to shape up, and she spent like a good part of the last 30 years of her life dedicating it, awareness to mental illness.
Well, it's self-medication. You see, here's the deal with actors, actresses, that kind of thing. The minute somebody says they have bipolar, they become a liability with work. If she had it on her forehead, bipolar, she wouldn't get a movie, because that means if she goes into a tailspin, they've got all this money invested. They can't just stop in the middle of a movie and start shooting it all over again because she had a breakdown. There's another actor who and I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to get sued. But he was in Independence Day, and he also had gotten a acting out, and people were starting to get to the point where they wouldn't hire him because we can't depend on him. What if he has an episode? What do we do? What happens to the movie? All the millions we're putting into this movie, we can't just stop and then recast it because of it. So people in the acting industry, people in the music industry, they are not going to say, hey, I'm bipolar. They'd rather people think they're just drunks.
And you know what the ironic thing about Patty Duke is? The ironic thing about Patty Duke is there was the Patty Duke show. That was created by Sidney Sheldon.
Right.
And Sidney Sheldon wrote an autobiography called The Other Side of Me. And Sidney Sheldon himself had bipolar.
Yeah.
And later in life, he found out that Patty Duke did too. So it's like ironic that, something that he was really fun about that. And at that time, it wasn't really talked about. he knew he had his highs and lows, and they said, you know what, Cindy, this is what you have.
Right.
And he became real prominent about it, too. He talked about it all the time, too, up until his death.
I think a lot of very creative people have that. Sidney Sheldon, for people who don't remember him, wasn't he Nick in It's a Wonderful Life? Nick the bartender?
I'm not for sure exactly.
But yeah, he was a very creative person. And
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, he created Heart to Heart and A Dreamy Genie.
Yeah, but again, you know, if he had come out and said, "Hey, I got bipolar," you know, people would be shying away from him because you're talking about large sums of money riding on the back who's somebody that might have an episode, and you know, it's you know, it puts people off. No, it's not him. It's not him. Sidney Sheldon, American writer and producer. It wasn't Nick. So there you go. I got that wrong, which I can be wrong.
That's why I decided to grab the bull by the horns and decide to do my things my way.
Right. So your gift, the gift of stanzas, is a subscription thing that people can people just, rather than a subscription, can they contact you on there and say, I only want one poem and pay you for one piece of work?
Yeah, there's 3 different subscriptions you can get. The one poem, like you say, you can get one poem for 99 cents, or you can get a year of poems. This is 12 poems, one a month, for $4.99. Or you can get a lifetime subscription, which I buy them one a month until the day I leave this world, for $49.99.
With this particular one, how do you find the words? What do you do? Do you give them the 5th degree, you know, and say, okay, tell me everything? I mean, how do you find the words that are going to be for those people?
Well, for me, words, I just write inspirational type poem. But if they have particular words, they give me keywords, and then I work around those keywords. Because I have a method that I use for my poetry, which is unorthodox for people that would write poems. I write from the bottom, the end of the poem, and work to the beginning, and then I work from the right to the left.
Mm-hmm.
So technically speaking, when I write a poem, I already know the end of the poem before I even start the beginning of the poem.
Mm-hmm. Now this is going to be interesting for you. I just decided to try to look up, just real quick, famous people with bipolar disorder. Jane Pauley, the news anchor. Mariette Hartley, famous actress. Jean-Claude Van Damme. Catherine Zeta-Jones. She's bipolar. Vivian Lee was famous. And that's what ultimately almost destroyed her career, because she was one of those people that they had to worry constantly about her not showing up for work. Russell Brand, Carrie Fisher. She's very outspoken about it.
Yeah.
And I give her all the credit in the world. I mean, let's face it. It makes you who you are. Achievers. They're the kids that were in the plays in school, and a lot of them are the overachievers. But the problem is, then they crash. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was terribly quiet in school. I was voted the third highest in the school.
Wow. I was voted the one nobody even knew was there.
I was voted the third highest in school. I was also voted the least likely, one of the least likely to succeed.
Wow. See, they just didn't even know I was there.
Yeah.
Dick Cavett.
Yeah.
Famous journalist, is it? Stephen Fry. actor, comedian. I noticed that a lot. A lot of comedians are bipolar or have manic depression.
Yeah. Look at the late Robin Williams. I mean, he had it too.
Yeah, and you know what? Nobody's going to convince me he didn't decide, you know what? Because he also had something similar to what our original show was about, and it's a disease that just there's no cure for it, and I think he said, you know what? I'm leaving on my own terms. I'm not progressive supranuclear palsy. He had something similar to that, and I think he just said, you know what? Because the guy who was in, and we might run a little bit over. Is that okay, boss?
I'm talking to you, so you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. See, there you go. You go. Okay. The guy who played Smead in Hook with Robin Williams, he was diagnosed with Parkinson, advanced extreme Parkinson, and suddenly he passed away. Bob Hoskins. And then Robin Williams, like a year later, finds out that he's got something similar to it that's just going to end up with him on a feeding tube and in a terrible condition. I mean, there are degrees. Some people, I have MS. I have lupus. It's not pretty, but I still walk. But I do know people who are literally bedbound with MS, with feeding tubes. They're paralyzed from their neck down. Maybe I'm just too stupid to lay down. But there's different variations in all of these diseases. So the problem is there is no one set of shoes for every disease. And that's what makes it so hard to diagnose it, right?
Yeah, and so many diseases can mimic other diseases as well.
Yeah.
Symptoms show up.
Yeah, Rosemary Clooney. Who doesn't love Rosemary Clooney? But she's bipolar. Let me ask you, does bipolar... See, this other disease, this progressive supranuclear palsy, does not run in families. Alzheimer's does. Two of Teddy's sisters had Alzheimer's before they passed. His brother's just a freaking nut. But Teddy has Alzheimer's. So there's 3 siblings with Alzheimer's. Now, as far as I know, nobody saw that kind of behavior in either of his parents, but that doesn't mean it wasn't in the grandparents, okay? Is bipolar, does that run is that a family genetic thing that can make you predisposed?
Yeah, it runs on the mother's recessive gene. And what's interesting, most people don't realize, you can have your mother, which in the case my mother is, you can have your mother, you can have one slight thing, which can lead to, because my mother, which we looked it up, and there's been research, extensive research through the Mayo Clinic, and even a person with obsessive compulsive disorder can lead to a child with bipolar.
Wow. Because you know what? Teddy's father, his three siblings are from a father who died during the influenza thing back in 1920 or something. But Teddy, Dorothy, and Joe are from his father, Joe. So she was married twice. Her first husband died. And so that makes sense because 2 of the sisters were born with a different father, so it would have to run through his mother's side for them all to carry it if it's genetic. So that's interesting. I've never thought of it.
And the general population with the heaviest bipolar rating is the Amish.
Really?
Yeah. The Amish has the highest population with bipolar.
Wow. They were Jews from Germany and Czechoslovakia, gypsies.
Yeah,
they were Jews too.
Dutch and all that.
Yeah. Wow. So anyway, tell them all about where they can get your book, Hush, which I suggest everybody get. It's not a downer book. It's not going to tell you to go out and cut your wrists or anything. It's poetry, which is inspired by Zachary Switzer's bipolar disorder, and he turned it into a very positive thing. Do you think it inspires people?
Well, it depends on who gets the book. I mean, I know it hasn't really sold that much, but I know the people that have bought it and read it, they think, wow, this... Because my goal on this book was, whenever I released it, there's like 250 poems in there, somewhere like that.
Mm-hmm.
If one person one poem out of all of that can reach one person in one way, then I've done my job.
Right.
And I was taught that by my great friend on Facebook so far, and your friend that you had on your show too, Don Carpenter. And
Okay.
him and I talk all the time. He's like, if you reach somebody in some way, then you've done your job.
That's about it. That I tell people all the time, I don't get paid to do what I do. I do it because I want to help people. I want to educate people. I want to entertain people. And if I can help one person, just one person, either think or feel better, or a light goes on in their head and says, son of a gun, that's what's going on. That makes it all worth it for me. I'd love to get paid, but, that's not happening. But if I can help one person, that makes it worth it for me, because I don't want to leave this world just being a bottom, somebody that feeds off of others. I want to be somebody who made a difference in someone's life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's why, the Gift of Stanzas is out there and Hush both, because I'm going to use both of those to get my name out there, only because I want to use them to promote help for mental health, to help the poor, help the disabled, help people that, are illiterate. All those things that, things that I endured to give back.
Right.
When I finished eighth grade graduation and all that, when I got into high school, I was at fourth grade reading level.
Wow.
And, I finished, when I started college, I had to relearn how to read, because I hadn't read very well.
Yeah. See, my problem is I can't speak very well, but I read really great. So, that was my problem. Mel Gibson has bipolar. He's been diagnosed as bipolar. I don't know if that was a big surprise to anybody. That old saying, there's someone out there fighting a battle. Everybody out there has a battle. It might be cancer. It might be supranuclear palsy. It might be MS. It might be systemic lupus. It might be Lou Gehrig's disease, but everybody is out there fighting something. You don't get out of this life easy. You got to die. Margot Kidder from Superman. I'm just going through names that are coming up of that. Christy McNichols, Burgess Meredith, all the Marilyn Monroe. Now they know she was bipolar. Kim Novak, Sinead O'Connor, big surprise. But these are all high functioning people. These are people that are Edgar Allan Poe, my hero. He wrote the first murder detective, Murder on the Rue Morgue. These people are high functioning people, so never take it for granted that just because somebody is high functioning that they don't have something going on. And I hope your book, it's on Amazon, and the site is for your poetry is what?
The Gift of Stanzas.
The Gift, THE, Gift of Stanzas.
GIFT of Stanzas.
Okay, and I hope everybody will check them out. He's a very talented young man, and a joy to. I'm privileged to call him a friend, And I hope you guys will check out his book, Hush, and The Gift of Stanzas. And we're out of time, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to play one more song for everybody. And let me see what it is before I kick it in here. No, that's no good. That's no good. Let's see. How about Bryan Adams? Because it's a perfect song, because Catherine's book is a love story about getting devastating news. You're a couple in love. It couldn't get better. And then suddenly the floor comes out from under you. And it's about what you'll do when you love someone, what lengths you'll go to. So this is Dreamstream Radio, and I'm going to play that song. And Zachary Switzer, thank you for coming on and talking about your book, Hush, and The Gift of Stanzas.
Somewhere over the rainbow, birds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow, while
Thank you for visiting me at my lair. And God bless you and yours. Yeah. And you know, I only know bipolar from Teddy, and I describe it, and nobody can use this because this is my term, and when I write the book, this is what it's going to be called, the ride. When I was talking to the doctor about his Alzheimer's and everything else going on, we had gotten a new doctor. And I said, do you know the old wooden, what do you call it, roller coaster at Coney Island? And when it pulled it up, you could hear the wheels going chink, 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 chink as it's going up, or click, clack as it's going up. And then you're at the precipice, you know, you're right at the top. And all of a sudden, you're flying down, and that's when they're screaming and crying and that kind of thing. Is that kind of what you went through, or was yours different?
Mine, it was very distinct, mine was, because I had the 2 weeks of depression, which it was good before that, but this was actually depression. They first thought, they misdiagnosed me 3 times.
Yeah.
First it was, clinical depression. Because, it's okay, he's sad, he's, depressed about things. Mm-hmm. And they thought, well, maybe it's not that. Then they thought major depressive disorder, which is a stronger form of depression, because it was, it got to the point where I wanted to commit suicide.
Oof.
And then they said, wait a minute, he was sad and wanted to commit suicide. Now he's all happy. Maybe it's schizoaffective disorder. Because they thought I had, schizophrenia. Then they thought, well, no, now you don't have schizoaffective disorder, because now not only was he depressed, of it prior to being actually diagnosed with it, prior to 2 hospitalizations in the psych ward and being committed. And what it really is I was depressed, so I wrote a lot of thoughts down, when I was depressed, and then after the thoughts, which most people get the depressed side, and then after they reach the depressed side, they go to the mania, the can't sleep, wild side.
Right.
And shortly after I'd done the depressed thoughts, it was after that, once I wrote that, I saw the thoughts, and then I met Manic, and all these thoughts turned into rhyming things. So I turned the thoughts I had into poetry form. So I used the depressed thoughts that was there, and when I couldn't sleep, I wrote poems from that.
Wow. So you took bipolar depression and turned it into a catharsis, a way to deal with it by writing it down and turning it into poetry.
Yeah.
That's usually how. Nobody's going to tell me Bob Dylan isn't depressed. All his music is depressing. But, unless it's being sung by somebody that really can sing. But that's a lot of poetry and music and all are written by people who have some battle going on. You were diagnosed, how old were you when you were diagnosed with bipolar?
I was diagnosed officially between January and March of 2002.
So you were an adult.
I was technically 18, going on 19 that June. I was going to be in June. I was going to be 19.
Toto? I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Welcome to Mobanshi's Lair, rocking your world.
We've got another guest on the line. Zachary Switzer is an author, a publisher, and he's got a book out called Hush, and he also has a poetry line out that's on the internet. And Zachary Switzer, welcome to the Lair.
Hi, Mel. How's it going?
Okay, it's going great. Tell us about Hush. That's your book, right?
Yes.
Tell us about it and why you wrote it.
Well, Hush is a poetry book, and it's got poetry in it, and it's about bipolar disorder, mine in particular, my diagnosis